Continuing my discussion about trauma. So just to recap a little bit, first of all, we have to be able to recognize we have been traumatized. And if we have symptoms in which we have difficulty controlling ourselves in our lives in any way, we feel ungrounded or whatever, disoriented, that's my first talk was, how do I know I've been traumatized? Whether it's validated by anybody or not, if you feel like you've had a traumatic experience in your life, you have, and that's just the way it is. If you feel it, that's what happened. It doesn't matter what was done or who says it was not what it was supposed to be. If it made you feel uncomfortable, if it was upsetting to you, if it shook you up, that's trauma. Then we also talked about therapies for trauma. And so there's a lot of well-meaning people who are wanting to do therapies that are going to alleviate you of your trauma. There's many of them. There's rapid eye movement, there's cathartic things, there's breath work, there's all kinds of ways that people are trying to get your trauma to heal. But the truth of the matter is, it just doesn't work that way. The body will heal trauma quite naturally on its own. In particular, trauma can often be healed at night while we're sleeping and dreaming. This is a time when we're sedated and our mind is able to go into that very, very deep subconscious state of delta theta sleep, which is your deep sleep, your REM and your deep sleep. And in the dreaming process, much of our psychic energy conflicts within the psyche are actually healed while we're asleep. And as my Chinit song master teacher Gilles Marin says, which is ideal because we're anesthetized, we can't move, and we don't have to be cognizant of what it is, and we don't have to understand it. And this is probably one of the most important aspects of healing trauma is we don't have to understand or explain exactly what is going on in there. That's why talking about it and rationalizing it and having a mental experience of, oh yeah, this happened to me and that was traumatic and blah, 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 X, Y, Z equals whatever, may feel like you got somewhere, but ultimately the only way trauma unwinds, comes out of your system, is either in your dreaming state or energetically while you're awake in the form of trembling, shaking, crying. The unwinding of trauma is almost inexplicable. Sometimes it can happen just in a session. For example, my husband's a myofascial release therapist. He works with people who have chronic pain. It can be post-surgical rehab, but it can also be chronic pain that's a result of being traumatized for one's whole life, in which we're carrying around what we call chronic holding, where the tissue becomes tighter and tighter, and then we just begin to experience pain all the time. The unwinding of trauma in a myofascial release session can happen from, my husband might have his fingers down in your psoas, and then there might be just a trembling within the psoas. That also happens in Chinit song sessions. Sometimes there's just a trembling, a light trembling in the body. Sometimes that results in a bigger awakening. Maybe the person will stretch or move or want to pull away or have whatever, some kind of aberration of physical movement that makes absolutely no sense, but they feel like they have to move their body in that way. That's unwinding. So to understand unwinding more, Dr. Peter Levine has a wonderful book called Waking the Tiger that explains that physiological process of unwinding trauma. When everything connects together and the body is ready, you feel safe, you're in an energetic place where this can happen, and then it just happens spontaneously. And the manifestation of that can be all kinds of different things. I had a client who came to realize on the table in a Chinit song session that her partner was a narcissistic person who had been torturing her for the last 3 or 4 years. And in the middle of the session, she began to gag. She had that feeling like she was going to throw up. And so I said, just go with that. Just make that sound, that kind of throwing up sound. And she did that during the session. And then when she got up to go to the restroom after the session, she actually physically threw up in the toilet. The next week, she moved out from that relationship and her health improved dramatically. in a very short period of time as a result of the awakening to, oh my God, this person's been poisoning me. It makes me want to throw up. That's what they're doing. They're making you sick. She was acting that out with her body, which released the energy of the traumatized situation, re-victimizing herself in a relationship with someone who was hurting her, and then moving away from that. So that's how trauma unwinds. It is visceral. We experience it viscerally. It happens to us in a thing that we feel. Somebody who is traumatizing you emotionally can hit you with a sucker punch right in your gut that can take your breath away. It can make you feel clammy. A person who's traumatizing you subtly through manipulations can make you feel like you're doubting yourself all the time. They can make you feel shaky inside. Getting mixed messages from people. You feel like as a small child that something's not right between your parents, and your mother smiles at you and tells you everything is fine. And now you've learned not to trust what you feel because mom says everything is fine. So just that is traumatizing. Then you live your whole life not being able to connect with what you feel because you can't trust it because mother said everything is fine. And mother's the goddess, and I believe everything that she says. So getting you to understand that trauma unwinds naturally. The physical body will unwind trauma when the conditions are right for it. So the process of healing trauma is about setting up the right conditions for that healing. And that's what I'll be talking about in my next segment of this healing trauma. Allowing trauma to heal naturally. That's really what the title of it should be. Vanessa Goldine, Bridge to Health Wellness, and I also teach classes at our Awaken and Evolve Learning Center here in Scottsdale. I work with clients remotely. Which is many of my processes can be done over the phone. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm looking forward to sharing more about demystifying trauma. Thank you very much.